Why, hello there, friends, and welcome to, or welcome back to, The Horror Diner. The diner is still regrettably caught in the interdimensional wrath of the old ones, and things are still terrible. Will the horrors ever end? No worries, if not. That being said, if this is not your first trip to our establishment, welcome back. Few things make us happier than a return customer. We kept your favorite booth just the way you like it. But if this is your very first trip to the diner, let me tell you a little bit about our fine establishment. I'm Spooky Pie, your waitress, your chef, and your new friend who's going to sit down and talk about horror with you. Here at the Horror Diner, we talk about any kind of horror media you can think of. Books, movies, podcasts, video games, TV shows, other stuff. But basically, if it's horror, then it's fair game. Everything is on the menu. But that's not all. Every episode, we also cook up a little something that goes with the piece of media we're talking about. Sometimes that's easier than others, and other times the work won't mention food at all, and we'll have to get a little creative on what our themed eat is, but we're nothing if not adaptable here. It is the only way to not fully invoke the wrath of the old ones. Any more than I guess we already have, because, well, look around. But don't look around too much. If they know that you've seen them, it will only make them angry. Just don't. I'm serious. Anyway, it's summer, which I think is honestly kind of awful. I forget how to feel joy when the temperatures go over 80 degrees. My normal summer activities are holding up an air conditioning and doing everything I can to not go outside for 3-ish months. But it's my understanding that people enjoy summer and enjoy doing things in summer, like camping. That's something people who enjoy being outside do, right? This is what I've been told anyway, so since it continues to be summer, just to add to the rest of the horror, I thought it only right to continue with the summer theme and have us all go to everyone's favorite summer camp, Camp Crystal Lake. Yay! A beautiful scenic getaway far, far away from civilization where nothing bad has ever happened ever, and certainly hasn't happened repeatedly across multiple movies. Guys, maybe we should stop going to Camp Crystal Lake. But not today. Today we're going, so get your gear, your can-do attitude, and your chastity belt, because today we're talking about the original Friday the 13th film, which might seem like kind of a weird choice on this channel if you look at what we usually talk about. Although, maybe you don't think it's super weird if you've been with us since the very first video we did on the Final Girl support group. And if you have, thank you. I love you. And also, I'm very sorry because I know how rough that video was. Look what a year and a halfway decent camera and microphone can do. Yay. Back to Friday the 13th. Is it perhaps a schlocky cash grab that mercilessly rips off Halloween while simultaneously being nowhere near as good as the text it's desperately mimicking? I mean, some people might say that, and I might not be able to say that they are 100% wrong if they did, but while I might be much more of a Halloween than a Friday girly, Friday the 13th has two things that Halloween doesn't. One, young 1980 Kevin Bacon, and two, Mrs. Pamela Voorhees. Jason's mom has got it going on. But it's gonna be a bit of a drive up to good old Camp Crystal Lake, so let's go fix you up something to eat on the trip. Oh look, we're still in this place. Oh well, let's make the most of it, I guess. While there isn't too much in the way of food in Friday the 13th, it does take place in a summer camp. And while I don't know a hell of a lot about camping, I do know that s'mores are a thing. So to make it a little fun, we're going to be making s'mores cookie bars with a blood ganache. So let's get started first on the cookie bars. You'll need 1 3/4 cups flour, 10 ounces vegan marshmallows, because I can't eat normal ones. You can probably use non-vegan, but keep in mind that they have a different melting point, so it could affect your bake time. 1 1/4 cup chocolate chips, 3/4 cup brown sugar, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 1/2 teaspoon baking powder, 1/2 cup melted butter, which we're not showing. If you butter pervs want to see the melted butter, you can join the melted butter tier on Patreon. We're running a decent establishment here. 3 tablespoons almond milk. For some reason, I forgot to show the salt when I filmed this. Oops, but you also need 1/4 teaspoon salt. First things first, preheat your oven to 350 degrees and line an 8x8 pan with parchment paper. In a large bowl, add your brown sugar, vanilla, almond milk, and melted butter. Whisk them together. Add your flour, baking powder, and salt. Mix everything together until it's fully combined. Add 2/3 of the dough to your pan and push it down evenly with your hands. Sprinkle 1 cup of chocolate chips over the top of the cookie dough, then place the marshmallows evenly on top of the chocolate chips. Sprinkle the remaining cookie dough on top, and then top that with the remaining chocolate chips. Pop it in the oven and set it up to bake for 25 minutes or until golden brown. While that's baking, let's whip up the blood ganache. You will need 3 ounces of white chocolate, either chopped or in chips, 1/4 cup heavy cream, and red and black food coloring. Put the white chocolate and heavy cream into a microwave-safe bowl and heat it in the microwave for 30 seconds. If you see bits of unmelted chocolate, heat it for an additional 15 to 20 seconds until you don't. Add in your red food coloring with just the smallest drop of black and stir everything until it is smooth, adjusting the color as necessary. When you're done, it should look like, well, blood. How neat is that? Let this set up for about 30 minutes to let it thicken a little. With your cookie bars done baking, go ahead and drizzle the ganache over the top until it looks as gruesome as you would like it to. It looks so cool! Now let's pop over into my office while this gore fest cools down enough for us to eat it. You got here fast. Welcome back to, this sister location thing. I really thought I was only going to be making that joke like once or twice, but at this rate, I'm going to have almost as many videos in this place as in my actual office. I think I'm out of Five Nights jokes. Sorry, Freddy. But y'all don't care about that. Unless you do, in which case, aw. But for everyone else, we should probably move this along. Like, remember the Friday the 13th? We're supposed to be talking about Friday the 13th. Specifically, Pamela Voorhees. I have a weird love for Pamela Voorhees. I always have. Like, in last year's Halloween Horror Nights Jason Universe maze, which I watched a walkthrough of because no one wanted to do that maze with me, I literally yelled, "Pam!" when she showed up. It's Pam! Jason's mom has got it going on. Pamela Voorhees occupies an odd little corner of my heart because, stick with me, she's kind of sympathetic. When the slasher genre, which don't get me wrong, I love, is gleefully serving up evil since childhood murder hobos, actual child predators, and later on, cute boyfriends with no moral compass, but gosh, aren't they cute. Pamela is a mom who just really loved her son. Also, can we just take a second and appreciate what a knockout Betsy Palmer was back in the day? Because, goodness gracious, ma'am. And in the upcoming sequel series, she's going to be played by Linda Cardellini? Are you kidding me? Anyway, there's generally a lot that has been said about bad or monstrous mothers in horror. As stated by Shamara Syny in her essay featured in Monstrous Mothers, Troubling Tropes, in a patriarchal economy of representation, the links between the monstrous and the maternal body are forged on the grounds of these uneasy slippages between binary categorizations. The intimate relationship between the maternal body, the fetus, and the child is ironically idolized as well as seen as threatening. The mother's capacity to give life also evokes the possibility that she holds the capacity to take away that life, which invests in her the double bind of being the source of both life and death. The film most think of as the first slasher, Psycho, also brought along with it a monstrous mother in the form of Norma Bates, who, even though she's revealed to be dead, is the voice in Norman's head as well as what he becomes when he kills. A few years before Friday the 13th, we would get Cheri, where Cheri's mother, Margaret White's fanatical relationship with religion leads her to being the most terrifying aspect of that movie as she tortures her daughter in the name of God. More contemporary films give us Mama of the movie Mama, and the goopy, weird horror that is Ellie in Evil Dead Rise. This really should have been my Mother's Day video. Oh well, all is to say the monstrous mother is not an entirely uncommon concept. But in most monstrous mother narratives, the mother's main point of antagonism is her children, to varying degrees of violence. Much of it boils down to her punishing her own kids more often than not. But Pamela sits outside of most of the other figures in that classification, in that her motivation is not to harm or control her son Jason. She loves Jason. Friday the 13th, unlike the film which spawned it, Halloween, is a revenge narrative. Further setting itself apart in this genre as, with revenge narratives, usually we are meant to be cheering on the person on a quest for revenge. You see other narratives where a father, or at the very least a man, is getting revenge for the death of a child or a loved one and is treated like a hero. John Wick rips through I don't even know how many people after they killed his dog, and he was right to do that. Plus, he's Keanu Reeves, let's be so for real right now. Have you seen him? It's breathtaking. You're breathtaking! Heck, Inigo Montoya's entire deal is just kill the guy who killed my dad, and we love him for it, which, again, rightly so. And to use a feminine example, and a likewise maternal one, in Kill Bill, the bride survives a gruesome attack carried out on her wedding day while pregnant, where she's left for dead. And when she wakes to find that she's not only not dead, but no longer pregnant, she goes on a rampage of vengeance for both her and the child she believes is dead. And we cheer for her. We cheer for John Wick and Inigo Montoya and Liam Neeson. I think I've never actually seen Taken. But when Pamela Voorhees goes on a similarly bloody tirade to avenge her son, we see her only as villainous. Does Pamela maybe take things a little bit too far? Some might say so. So it's not entirely surprising that she does fall into this idea of the monstrous mother and not the avenging hero. But I would argue that while she is a monster, she is not an entirely unsympathetic one. Before I get neck deep into that argument, because I think it's important for even people who are not familiar with the text to have an understanding of it so they can critically engage with the analysis I'll be presenting, I'm going to start off by doing a summary of the plot of Friday the 13th. If you don't want to be spoiled, even though I think at this point most people know most of the beats through cultural osmosis since the film is 45 years old. But if you somehow managed not to be spoiled for the events of Friday the 13th and want to stay that way, or if you're one of those people who gets really angry when video essays include a plot summary, please go ahead and skip ahead to the big old timestamp you can see down here. And please note, the entire thesis of this video does revolve around the big twist at the end of Friday the 13th. So if that's something you don't want to be spoiled at all, potentially you want to pop out and watch it first, it's a trim 95 minutes, so it won't take up too much of your time. Also, I need to throw out some trigger warnings for this piece because it, in some ways, is very much a snapshot of the time in which it was made. There is a completely unnecessary scene where a snake is killed. And it's a real snake, it is actually killed, which is awful, and I don't even like snakes. It's a short scene, but it's bad. There's also some weird cultural appropriation and sensitivities, as one of the teens multiple times dresses up in a Native American headdress. And while it is honestly a lot more mild than you would think, if you're particularly sensitive to blood and violence, you're probably just not going to have a good time. With that out of the way, now for anyone who doesn't care about being spoiled, or maybe likes to be told what happens in a horror movie you're curious about but don't want to watch yourself, or heck, if you already know what happens and you just want to spend time with me, let's get into it. We open on a dark Camp Crystal Lake in 1958. It's night and the counselors are sitting in a cabin singing some camp song. I don't know camp songs, especially religious camp songs, sorry. We have killer POV cam as we walk through a cabin of sleeping campers. We then cut back to the counselors, two of which leave the cabin hand in hand while the rest go back to singing. The couple sneaks off to get busy as the killer cam tracks them with the infamous equivalent of the JoJo ominous noise playing. The couple appears to recognize the killer, who proceeds to off them. We then move to Friday, June 13th, the present, which looks a lot like 1980. Also, June 13th is Night Manager Salem's birthday, in case you didn't know. He remembers who does and doesn't offer him tribute. Anyway, we see a girl with a backpack wandering through a thus far undisclosed town. She asks a dog for directions, and he is very helpful, but not understanding dog, the girl must stop in a diner and ask how far to Camp Crystal Lake, to which all inhabitants of the diner slowly and ominously turn towards her. One asks if they've opened Camp Blood again, and another remarks how no buses or anything go all the way up that way. There is a distinct unease in this place. A well-mannered trucker offers to bring her part of the way, and we learn that our plucky brunette camper is named Annie. Along the way, she's accosted by a stereotypically unnerving older man who says, "You're going up to Camp Blood, ain't ya?" While our truck-driving friend emphatically waves him away like this is something that just happens all the time and he is very much over it. But our harbinger is undeterred by how much nobody likes him and shouts after Annie that she'll never come back again. It's got a death curse. And then, having delivered his prophecy, he gets on his little bicycle and pedals away. This scene is supposed to be textbook ominous, but I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty funny. Anyway, on the drive, our trucker friend fills Annie in on what happened back in Crystal Lake. He tells her to quit. The two kids were murdered in 58 and a kid drowned in 57. The last time they tried to open, the water was bad. It has a curse, and she should just give up right now. She says she can't quit. He tells her she's a dumb kid, and the rest of the ride is uneventful, and he drops her off at the partway point. We cut to a car full of raucous banjo music and Kevin Bacon. There's two other people too, I guess. I don't know them. They're presumably more counselors, and we watch them pull into Camp Crystal Lake, and at the camp, we meet up with a half-naked man and a girl named Alice. If you've ever listened to the audiobook version of Grady Hendrix's Final Girl support group, she's the narrator, and I think that's neat. We see Alice doing repairs around the camp while the shirtless man flagrantly hits on her and the other counselors get changed. Shirtless man finally puts a shirt on and leaves camp, leaving the teens to their own devices. The counselors talk about how the place is called Camp Blood, and one remarks about how there must be poisonous snakes and crocodiles, which is unfortunately foreshadowing to that awful snake scene. We're back to Annie, who catches a ride in a Jeep, saying she's going to Camp Crystal Lake. We neither see the driver, nor do they say anything to her, they just wordlessly drive. The car misses the turn-off for Camp Crystal Lake, and when the car begins accelerating, Annie jumps out of the moving vehicle and makes a break for it through the forest, pursued by the killer, who we still haven't seen and only get killer cam POV from. This, doesn't end well for Annie. But hey, back to summer camp. The currently still alive teens are up to summer teen shenanigans, none the wiser to what happened in the woods. Whilst frolicking the lake, one of them thinks she sees someone in the woods, but doesn't really dwell on it. A policeman shows up to harass the teens and says he's looking for Ralph the Town Crazy, who was our harbinger from earlier. He's gotten word that he's headed this way. He tells them, "We ain't gonna stand for no weirdness out here," before heading out on his way. So helpful. Alice stumbles on Ralph the Harbinger hiding in the pantry, who springs out, telling her that he's a messenger of God and that she's doomed if she stays here, and that the place has a death curse. Apparently God sent him to warn the teens. He then scoots away to once more get on his little bike and pedal away, throwing out a few "doomed, you're all doomed" as he goes. Kevin Bacon and his girlfriend sneak off, and one of the other teens off-puttingly watches them for a bit before following a shape into a cabin, so we won't be seeing him again. The storm is rolling in, so Kevin Bacon and his lady duck into a cabin to take shelter and knock boots. This is one of the slashers that define the genre, so I'll let you guess how well that's gonna go for them. Everyone say, "Bye, Kevin Bacon." Bye, Kevin Bacon's girlfriend. Elsewhere, our three remaining counselors are hanging out with all their clothes on, temporarily, and one of them suggests that they play Strip Monopoly. Alice still has most of her clothes on, the other two don't, when one of them realizes she probably left the windows open in her cabin and heads out into the storm in her skivvies and a raincoat. Instead of following her, though, we cut to a diner. The previously shirtless man, who promised to be back at the camp by sundown, is instead eating pie while teenagers are being offed. Realizing, as the only adult, he should probably go back and make sure they're okay, he makes his way out into the storm and his Jeep. We're back at the camp, and it's time to say goodbye to Raincoat and Underwear Girl. After getting ready for bed, she's lured out into the storm by what sounds like a child crying out for help, but no good deed goes unpunished. We're a little halfway through the movie, and we're down to 2 surviving teens. Our 2 survivors see the lights on the campgrounds and go to investigate in the storm. They find a bloody hatchet lovingly tucked into bed in one of the cabins. Aww. Do not find this nearly as weird as they should, and continue to try and find the rest of the teens. Alice suggests they call someone, being probably the first person to display sense, and they break into the camp office, where the phone is, of course, dead. And we pan outside to see the phone lines have all been cut. Also, the car won't start. Alice thinks they should just try and hike out, because staying here seems not great. But surviving teen boy insists that everything is fine, there is a logical explanation for all this, and they should just sit tight until their designated adult shows up like he was supposed to do literally hours ago. Our only adult who is supposed to be watching the teens makes it to the edge of Camp Crystal Lake, when he sees someone we don't that he appears to recognize. He greets them and is presumably quickly off for his troubles. Bye, designated adult. Which is when the power to the whole camp goes out. Our surviving teen boy heads out into the storm to try and figure out what caused this, telling Alice to stay put and try to get some sleep. Sometime a little later, Alice wakes presumably from a nightmare, calling to Bill, who is the last standing teen boy, so I guess we'll give him his name. If you haven't figured out, really out of the teens, only Alice matters to the story. But anyway, Alice decides Bill has been gone way too long, so she heads out in her little yellow raincoat with her little lantern to find him, and bless her, she sure does find him. impaled to a door with arrows. Womp womp. Bye, Bill. She flees back to the cabin she had been napping in and tries to barricade the door so she can hold up and hide from the killer. Armed with a baseball bat and a barbecue fork, she patrols the cabin looking for some idea of what she should do, which is when the corpse of her friend who went looking for the crying child, not that crying child, is hurled through the window. Alice doesn't take this very well, and in her distress manages to lose her raincoat and her weapons. Not to worry though, because a jeep has pulled up, and she's sure the adult that was supposed to be her hours ago has finally come and will save her, so she runs out and is greeted by a woman in a cable knit sweater. Alice initially is cautious of her, but the woman identifies herself as Mrs. Voorhees. It's Pam! Saying she's an old friend of the people who own the camp, and this is apparently all the convincing Alice needs, and throws herself on this woman she just met, hugging her and weeping openly. Because surely she is saved now. Finally, an adult is here! Pamela assures Alice that everything is alright and that she'll take care of her. After all, she used to work at this camp. Alice begs her not to go look for the other counselors, saying how they're all dead. But Pam is very brave and says she isn't afraid. Finding the corpse of the girl thrown through the window, she laments how young and pretty the girl was, and says how this place never should have been opened back up. She asks Alice if she knew that a young boy drowned here, the year before the two counselors were famously murdered here died. She tells her how the counselors weren't paying attention as they had been getting down to business, and didn't notice that the boy was drowning. She tells Alice that the boy's name was Jason. She had trusted the counselors to look after her son while she worked in the camp kitchen. Jason wasn't a very good swimmer, she says, and then tells Alice they can go now. Alice protests, and Pam stares through time, having a vision of a boy shouting for help. She tells Alice that Jason was her son and that today is his birthday, and how she couldn't let this place be opened up again after what had happened. Pamela suddenly turns on Alice, saying how she let him drown and she wasn't paying attention, even though Alice wasn't even born when this happened, and advances on her with a knife. Alice very admirably defends herself with a fire poker and runs into the night. Fleeing first to the jeep, she finds the corpse of Annie. Running from that, she finds the remains of the designated adult and books it into the woods. Pamela watches her, saying, "Kill her, Mommy. Kill her. Don't let her get away. Don't let her live," in a childish voice, and then answering herself with, "I won't, Jason," before pursuing Alice. Alice ducks into a supply cabin, and hey, good girl Alice, she gets a shotgun. But unfortunately, it's not loaded, and the ammo is locked in a cabinet she does not have a key for. Pamela advances on Alice, saying, "Kill her, Mommy," over and over, and Alice throws everything but the kitchen sink at this woman, before kind of giving up for a minute and standing there while she just gets whacked around. But she manages to get back the shotgun and uses it to bludgeon Pamela and runs again. But you can't keep Pam down, she's plucky, and she once more pursues Alice, all the while Jason is talking to her and egging her on. Alice flees back to the nap cabin and hides in the pantry. Not a very good place to hide.
This is a very good spot. Well, I guess not. A very good spot.
It really takes a very little time at all for her to be found, and now Pam has a machete, but Alice has a frying pan.
Frying pans! Who knew, right?
Assuming that Mrs. Voorhees is unconscious, but not finishing the job, God help her, Alice heads out to the lake to sit sadly by the canoes. Pamela is obviously not dead, and they fight on the beach before Alice manages to get her hands on the machete and behead the other woman. Iconic final girl shit, honestly. Thoroughly exhausted, she gets into a canoe and paddles out to the center of the lake, presumably to sleep until help comes. Does it make total sense for her to do this? No. But if she didn't, we wouldn't have the cinematic shot of the police finally showing up to help after there is virtually no one left to save, and everything looks well and good until a waterlogged looking child rises up from the lake to pull her down. But it's okay. It was just a dream, and our girl is in the hospital getting to learn how all of her friends are dead. She asks if the boy is dead too, but the police officer says that they didn't find any boy. Alice ominously says, "Then he's still there." And we cut to the placid-looking crystal lake where ripples are forming as something is under the water, clearly setting up for a sequel, and we roll credits. Okay, everybody who bounced, you can come back in now. The summary is over. Let's get back to talking about Pam, our sympathetic monster mom. Unlike the movie she stems from, Pamela herself is kind of an anomaly. Halloween, which it draws its heaviest inspiration from, presents a faceless immortal killer who kills just because he likes it. Other icons of horror, like Freddy Krueger, become similarly unkillable.
But nothing will ever kill me.
And and while it can be argued that he too has a revenge story, it'd be a lot harder to try and muster up sympathy for a guy who got himself into this situation by being a child predator. Pamela is neither faceless nor immortal. Not only do you get a full face reveal, but she doesn't survive the movie. She can still be considered arguably monstrous due to the scope of her revenge. I mean, she kind of got the counselor whose neglect led to Jason's death a bit ago and just kind of kept going. And also her strength, which can be considered nearly supernatural. She manages to impale a man on an arrow with her bare hands and throws a teenage girl through a window. Not to mention she takes multiple blows from Alice that would have killed a normal person, and she just keeps going like the Energizer Bunny right up until Alice decides to relieve her of her head. But immortality is not a prerequisite of being a monster. Most of your classic folktales end with the person we've decided is the hero slaying the big bad monster of the piece, and that monster, generally speaking, isn't going to be back as soon as the author needs a cash grab sequel. And again, generally speaking, these stories are pretty black and white. The monster is irredeemably evil, pure and simple. They go on a rampage powered purely by their want to be a problem, and in these cases, the hero is pretty clear-cut as being a figure of true good. After all, the monster is just a monster, plain and simple. But what about when it isn't that simple? What about the times when you go, okay, well, sure, they did some pretty bad stuff, but they weren't totally wrong. After all, Pamela's rampage is hardly unprovoked. She wasn't born a monster, she was made into one. She trusted the camp counselors would do their job. She trusted the thing she loved most, her only son, into their care, and they let him die. This is compounded by the guilt that if she herself had been watching him, maybe it could have been prevented. Who's to say if Jason hadn't drowned that she wouldn't be living peacefully? His death is the trigger that makes grief and guilt warp her into a monster. And again, sure, she takes it too far, but what mother wouldn't want revenge on those responsible for the death of their child? This is noted as followed in Erin Harrington's essay, Gynaehorror, Women Theory and Horror Film. The villain of the first film is revealed to be his mother, Pamela. A summer camp reopens after having closed for 2 decades because of a series of grisly murders. But the new camp counselors are again picked off one by Mrs. Voorhees, the camp's cook. She is avenging the death of her young hydrocephalic son, Jason, who had drowned at the former camp while teenagers who she had asked to mind him were distracted by sex and drug use. Mrs. Voorhees' actions are shown to be motivated by both grief and maternal guilt. While Mrs. Voorhees can be read as a malevolent and violent monstrous mother, who is both overbearing and negligent, I suggest that she is a far more ambiguous figure who is shaped by both horror and redemption. Mrs. Voorhees exemplifies a predominant type of mother of the horror film, in that she is so devoted to her child that she will do anything to save, protect, or avenge him. But at the same time, she was the one who, through the abdication of her parental responsibilities, in this case to irresponsible teenagers and by being a young solo working mother, put him in danger in the first place. This coupling of the internal guilt of contributing to his death by not watching him every second of every day, with harm befalling him the one time he left her sight, as well as her overpowering sense of vengeance for the people responsible for the death of her boy, did somewhat remind me of another fictional mother, also seen as deeply monstrous, but who, again, was only driven to that monstrosity as revenge for the death of her son. And that character I found an analog to Pamela Voorhees in was Grendel's mother from the epic poem Beowulf. For those of you who managed to dodge reading Beowulf in high school, I sure didn't. Here's a very condensed summary of a very, very long epic poem, or at least the parts that pertain to our discussion, since Beowulf is not only the oldest surviving Germanic epic, but also the longest Old English poem. It is long. But basically, Beowulf follows, Beowulf. It begins when the King of Denmark throws a party and that thing was so loud that it literally drove a monster from his swamp. Enraged that he had been disturbed by all this noise, the monster, Grendel, proceeded to terrorize the kingdom for 12 years, showing up each night to carry away one of the king's warriors and eat him. Truly, Grendel walked so Shrek could run. The titular Beowulf hears about this and decides he needs to insert himself in other people's business. So he travels to the neighboring kingdom and tells the king that he will take care of his monster problem. And the king is like, yeah, okay, sure, kid, but decides to let him stay and give it a shot. They throw another big raucous party because these people don't learn, and then go to bed. And that night, as he's been doing for the past 12 years, Grendel shows up because these dum-dums did it again, knowing the score. But this time he encounters Beowulf. They fight, Beowulf manages to rip Grendel's arm off, and Grendel, having been mortally wounded by this, runs home to his mom to die. The people of the kingdom, in an enormous show of tact, display Grendel's amputated arm in the Great Hall, and collectively go, well, thank God that's done. But, of course, it's not. Thinking they're monster-free, they throw another party, which is when Grendel's mother, rudely never given a name by the poem, shows up seeking revenge. She invades the hall and kills one of the king's men. Beowulf, shortly after, follows her back to her lair, in a lake of all places, and attacks her. They fight, and Grendel's mom almost wins. She really has him on the ropes until he manages to get a hold of her own sword and behead her with it, thus ending the mother and son's reign of terror and making Beowulf the conquering hero until some years down the road when he'll get killed by a dragon, but that has little to nothing to do with what we're talking about right now. And when you get right down to it, it's not too dissimilar. Sure, Pamela's son wouldn't go on his murderous rampage until he inexplicably returned from the dead, or never died, depending on which theory is popular at the time. So, while out of order, it's hard not to see the parallels here. In analyzing Beowulf, and specifically Grendel's mother's place within it, Kayla J. Baur says, "It is interesting to note that when the poet says how that monstrous woman avenged her son, the label of monstrous is placed in direct contrast with the term avenged, implying that it is the act of vengeance which makes her a monster. The avenging woman is not only characterized as a monster for the bloodshed, but also quite possibly because her actions are seen not to be appropriate for a woman." This was written about Grendel's mother, but truly, if you didn't know that, this could just as easily be taken from an analysis of Pamela Voorhees. If we want to dig further, their stories mirror one another. In both instances, the mother is placid, peaceful even, and only driven to action after the death of her son, in both cases, a son that society sees as a monster. Neither woman is seen as a threat until driven to violence by revenge. Both are so underestimated that Grendel's mother doesn't even get a name, and Pamela doesn't get to be known as anything other than Mrs. Voorhees until Friday the 13th Part 4, long after her death. Neither woman is considered significant or threatening enough by the hero or the narration to even be named until, again, her son is killed. In both instances, the hero, Beowulf and Alice, must enter the monster's domain and do battle with them. In the case of Beowulf, he must enter the lair of Grendel's mother, found in a lake. And when Alice enters the final battle with Pamela, she does so at the edge of Crystal Lake. In both climatic battles, the hero is nearly defeated, finding that no weapon seems to kill the respective monster they face, until they are able to get their hands on their monster's own weapon, Grendel's mother's sword and Pamela Voorhees' machete, that would later go on to be the main weapon of her son Jason. And in both cases, the hero must use that weapon to behead their monster in order to finally defeat them. So while there are definite differences in the stories of these two women, in a great many ways they are a reflection. Both are single mothers made monstrous by their desire to seek revenge for the death of their child. But why are Grendel's mother and Pamela Voorhees framed as villains when so many other revenge narratives, like those I'd mentioned before, expect us, the audience, to cheer for the person seeking revenge? But in the case of these two women and characters who share similar DNA to them, we're expected to only see them as monsters despite having motivations in line with the heroes of other works. It could be argued, perhaps, that the difference lies in the area of effect of these women's revenge. They did not simply stop once they annihilated the person or people directly responsible for their child's death. That people who had no involvement in their child's fate became collateral damage. But even that doesn't fully hold up. Back to Kill Bill, we pretty early on see exactly who was responsible for the bride's attempted murder and the supposed death of her child. It's not that many people, but we then gleefully watch for roughly 2 hours, double that if you include the sequel, as the bride mows down over 70 people in her quest for revenge. The vast majority of those people were not directly involved in what befell her, but boy, we sure like watching Uma Thurman chop them up with a katana. The bride, like the other two women, is an avenging mother, unconcerned with any collateral damage in between her and what she considers the conclusion of her revenge. So why then is the bride seen as our hero, when Grendel's mother and Pamela Voorhees are not? And while I don't have a definitive answer in regards to this, there is one likely one. The bride is young and beautiful, while multiple translations of the Beowulf poem go to great pains to tell you how hideous Grendel's mother is, and while Betsy Palmer was never not beautiful at any point in her life, Western society has unhealthily linked beauty to youth. And equally problematically to youth being synonymous with being beautiful, it has long been a media shorthand that beauty equals goodness. Yes, this theory is kneecapped by the prevalent modern trend of the hot villain, and is probably going to go clean out the window as soon as we get Linda Cardellini as Pamela Voorhees, because, as stated in a Twitter post my friend Crystal sent me, I'm sorry, but there is no universe in which I'm not rooting for Linda Cardellini. Fuck them kids. But, for the sake of this essay, let's keep on track. Since the beauty being synonymous to goodness trend has been prevalent since ancient Greece, with Plato espousing about the virtue of healthy mind and healthy body, a theory that someone's inner character is reflected in their outward appearance. In Farwell Batul's 2025 article for Ripple Foundation, they stated, physical traits reflected societal beliefs where ugliness was linked to moral inferiority. In older stories, villains with monstrous or unique features were often portrayed as evil characters, reinforcing stereotypes that physical differences equal moral flaws. This has not only helped children differentiate between good and evil, but also subtly taught harmful biases, associating appearance with negative traits like cruelty or greed. The contrast between the hero, usually depicted as handsome and virtuous, and the villain strengthens the idea that goodness is linked to attractiveness, while ugliness signals moral decay. So Grendel's mother's appearance is seen as ugly, telegraphing her evilness, and Pamela Voorhees is, gasp, over the age of 40, which the internet will have you believe is 1 foot in the grave. When researching this video, I lost count of how many people repeatedly refer to Pamela Voorhees as that old lady. For Christ's sake, you guys, Betsy Palmer was 53 when she filmed Friday, not 83. But then again, Betty Davis was 54 when she made Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, a film whose main horror is I'm not young and pretty anymore, so what are we even doing here, guys? Getting back on track, since most critics of this film consider her old. Sure. This also feeds into the harmful trope of villainizing older women. So, if Pamela was in her early 30s like Uma Thurman when she filmed Kill Bill, or Grendel's mother was considered beautiful, again, like Uma Thurman, would they garner more sympathy? Or would we still be cheering for Alice and Beowulf to chop off their heads? It's hard to say, but I would still argue that despite her monstrous rampage, there is some sympathy to be found for Pamela Voorhees as well as Grendel's mother. But maybe that's just me. Anyway, I'm pretty sure our goodies are cool enough to eat now, so let's grab some and I'll meet you back in my office. You know, if this is the sort of thing you got to eat when you go camping, I might actually consider going camping. Who am I kidding? No, I wouldn't. So, what's your favorite classic slasher? Do you think you'll make these gory little messes? Drop your thoughts on the work, the food, and what your favorite monster mom is in the comments below. I read all your comments, even the really, really mean ones. You can find the recipe, my recommendations, and sources listed in the description below. And hey, if you enjoyed your stay here, maybe you'd think about liking and subscribing to see what we cook up next. And hit the hype button. I don't know what it does, but I think it helps. And if you want to go even further, we've got a Patreon. A lot goes on in front of and behind the camera to make these videos, and every little bit helps us keep the lights on in the diner and the gas on the stove. Patrons get fun perks like getting episodes early, access to the Horror Diner Discord, and possibly even exclusive cat pictures. And patrons of $5 and more get to be part of the Horror Diner Book Club, where patrons get to vote on a book for me to cover that you can read along with me, and then I make an exclusive video on that just for you on Patreon. We've covered things like Bitterthorn by Kat Dunn, We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer, What Hunger by Catherine Dang, The Sound of the Dark by Daniel Church, and I'll Make a Spectacle of You by Beatrice Winifred Eicher. It's neat! Patrons of all levels also get to enjoy exclusive content, like me having a mental breakdown after watching Return to Silent Hill. You can also find that linked in the description below, as well as links to where you can find us on Instagram, Bluesky, TikTok, and Tumblr. We also have a tiny merch store now, so if you've ever wanted a Horror Diner mug or to walk around town advertising us on your body, or if you liked the shirt I was wearing in the cooking segment based off a comment by that one guy who really hated my Summer Hikaru Died video, you can get those things. Also, let me know if there's other types of merch or designs you'd like to see in the shop. I'll, see what I can do. I'm still pretty baby with this whole having merch thing. The Night Manager presents his tummy. This has been Friday the 13th. I've been Spooky Pie, and you have been amazing. Y'all come back now, you hear? He would like you to come back too. Okay, recording for realsies this time. Noah, unfortunately, has left, but we still have Luke. Luke. You got here fast. Welcome back to, this. I know. Hi. Hi. I can't see him down here. that I have in Nova. The equilibrium of how do I be comfortable but also have it so you can see my shirt says Camp Crystal Lake. It's also pink, which I don't know if that reads with this lighting, but please appreciate that I have a pink Camp Crystal Lake shirt on. We open on a dark Cample. Oh no, my Jason kitty fell over. Jason kitty. Finally coming to... Finally... I'll just take it over. Finally! An adult is here! I hate how I did that line. Noah, can you look up so everyone can see your pretty face? Noah. Oh. You got a little bit of Noah face. Let's get back to talking about Pam, our sympathetic... Oy vey. Presents a faceless immortal... Why can I not talk without feeling like I'm gonna start coughing? Why is my throat so dry today? Why does anything? Why does summer? Why are we here? Where does that road go to? Who owns that large automobile? It's so sad you can't see Noah. He is so cute. Noah. Look at that bear. Noah.